Hello and welcome to Women in Retail Talks, the podcast where C-suite executive women in the retail space share their stories of professional growth, leadership development, personal journeys, and more. I'm Marie Albagez, Senior Editor of Women in Retail, a membership-based community of executive women at leading retailers and brands. Today, I am joined by Christina Cubeta, who most recently was the Chief Merchandising Officer and Consumer Division Head of FTD, the flower delivery service. She's going to share more about how she navigated the merger at FTD, what she looks for in building a great team, and a lot more. So, Christina, let's bring you in. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for this conversation. And I want to just get straight into talking about your time at FTD. We were talking right before this about how you most recently left, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I know that you joined in December of 2020, and that, when you were hired, the company had made it through the other end of a bankruptcy that happened in 2019 and had just launched the rebrand. So, enter Christina. I'd love to know what that start was like at FTD.
Really good question. So the start was actually a massive undertaking. Post the bankruptcy, obviously they had reduced the staff quite a bit, and there was a lot of turnover in the merchandising leadership just prior to me. So the team, when I entered, was really not structured properly yet and didn't have the systems or support to be truly excellent, or quite frankly, I would say, enjoy what they were doing. I inherited a team that was smart, hungry, and loved being there, but there were a lot of sort of things around them that were quite frustrating. The bankruptcy also, in my opinion, created a really fragmented organization where roles that were really critical to collaborate had sort of been scattered across the company. And from my point of view, that just wreaks havoc on day-to-day cross-functional coordination. It was challenging for folks really to get things done. And then, so now you have this, additionally, there's this massive influx of creativity with the rebrand, and which is exciting and gorgeous. And then this desire to innovate and grow almost like a startup. And that was, of course, exciting and what attracted me to the job, but we weren't actually in a position to execute on that, given what I just kind of walked through, right? So my first 6 to 8 months were all about really learning trial by fire. So I joined just prior to two major retail peaks. So Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, which are not for the faint of heart, if anybody is familiar with those retail peaks. And then really just got focused on rebuilding processes and teams, and in some places, the organizational structure. That was really like the backbone of what needed to get done. While simultaneously, here I am, right, learning about flowers and then how to develop a point of view about how the brand should come to life through products, the gifting service. So not for the faint of heart, but I would say really my background in building things from scratch to scale really positioned me well for that. That's often a tumultuous ride. And I had really lovely colleagues. I'm just a big proponent of the concept that, great teams are everything. So it was certainly an intense start, but that's really where I focused, was on creating a good foundation.
Yeah, when you were talking, I kept thinking wow, you're starting from scratch here. And that's appealing to you, which is great. So walk me a little bit more through the team. You mentioned, they were really hungry to get started, but there was some struggles, some challenges there in terms of disjointed leadership and that sort of thing. So, as you're working through all of these challenges, your team is at the center of that. How did you kind of get them on board? How did you get them to greenlight your ideas and vice versa?
I think just to start, just getting in the trenches with them. That's in my opinion, all leaders take different tacks related to this, but in my opinion, it's one of the easiest and quickest way, number one, to learn, to really gain empathy for your team and what they're going through. And then number three, to just gain the trust and buy-in. So being in the trenches helped me see that how difficult the systems might have been. And when we may have had trouble delivering something on time, or something as innovative as we wanted it to be, sort of what the reasons for that were, really being able to see it through their eyes, that was really important to me. And they had been through so much before I joined. So when you're kind of there through that level of turnover, there's a healthy level of skepticism about new leaders coming in, right? You have your ideas, you're energetic, you think you might know how to solve problems. And folks on the other side of the table might be sitting there thinking, like, I've seen this before. How long
Right.
is this
Who's
going to
this
last?
guy?
Is she really going to listen?
Right.
So I think, and certainly I'm sure there are places I could have done it better to start with, but I think really just kind of getting my hands dirty helped me retool things and get on the same side with my team.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned, you're really like learning trial by fire. What are some of the ways that you've found have been successful in really getting to know the team, listening? Do you do one-on-one meetings? Like, what is your kind of standard practice for, I'm going to learn everything I can about this company and this team so that they can be successful?
So I think certainly one-on-ones are helpful, but I think more so it's about a simple question, asking the question and listening to the answer around how would you do this? Where do you see there's opportunity to change this? If you could reinvent it, what would you do? Versus bringing in your own ideas to start. I
Yeah.
like to ask questions first and see what I get back, and then table some controversial ideas around, if we did it this way, what would you think about that? And that kind of starting with that seek to learn mentality, I found gets you to a good place.
Yeah, because I think at that point they're willing to share, right? If they've got a leader who is showing a great interest, who isn't just kind of throwing their ideas out there and saying, "Well, we're going to do it this way. I know you guys did it this way in the past and that didn't work." So, rather than just coming with your own kind of set of initiatives and ideas, you're taking the time to learn from the people that have been there longer and can see, what's worked and what hasn't. So it's really good advice.
The one thing I'd put on top of that, which I think is really important, is putting your money where your mouth is. So like you've got to deliver after that. If you've listened and you've heard and you've asked the questions, being able to then regurgitate back to your team, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm understanding is in the way of being excellent, this is what I'm hearing are your ideas for where there's opportunity for the business to grow. If we fix these couple of things, you'll be able to thrive in your role. Did I hear it right? So for me, that's like a really important and excellent starting point. And then two, I actually go out of my way to hold myself accountable in front of everyone publicly. You said these are the 5 things we need to fix. Here's where I am on fixing the 5 things. I think I'm going to get to number 5 by this time. In the meantime, I'm going to ask you to do XYZ to help us get there. I'm going to be in it with you and I'm going to keep you regularly updated. So creating that kind of level of transparency and holding myself accountable, I've also found to be really important, especially in situations where, again, you have a lot of rebuild or sort of reconstruction to do.
Yeah, that's so great because so many times, a leader is up for listening and writing down the ideas, and then, months go by and there's no action taken. So I love that you're being transparent and saying like, I can't do everything. Here are the things that I've heard that I think will also work. And here are the next steps. And here's me holding myself accountable and letting you guys hold me accountable by saying like, this is what is in the works and this is what's possible and this is what's not possible. So I love that. So as you're getting to know this team and this company, I'm guessing you're also building the company in that, you mentioned that it had a reduced workforce. I'm guessing that you were hiring at some point in the 3 years. What were you looking for when it comes to hiring great candidates?
Sure. So when I'm building my team, outside of looking for, are you excellent at your skill set, right? For me, that's like just table stakes. There's kind of a healthy list of things I'm kind of sussing out in the interview process. So, do you seek to learn? Do you have that sort of same fiber or mentality that I was just kind of talking through? Because we'll be able to solve a lot of problems that way. How do you collaborate? Do you look to repair when things are broken, or do you throw your hands up and get frustrated? Are you a good human? Can others trust you? For me, that's really important, if you're smart but you're a jerk, you're out on my team. And then do you have stamina to reinvent? That kind of goes with the, when you find things are broken, do you seek to repair or throw your hands up? Those are some of the critical things I'm looking for in my teammates, and really looking to kind of build the team as sort of puzzle pieces. I also look at how different skill sets complement each other, because ultimately those things start to have a compounding effect, and you can get to someplace really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just had the chief e-commerce officer of Dick's Sporting Goods, Denise Karkos, at an event, and she was talking about, the power of an employee having a positive attitude and how much of a difference that can make when you have an energy drainer on your team versus an energy saver. And, back to what you were saying about, someone who's not going to be negative about it, who's going to look to fix the problems instead of just pointing out the problem. So I think we hear that a lot. And I think that that's a great way to think about, your next interview or your next hire and what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about, the merger that you saw FTD through with the e-commerce company From You Flowers. And I know that meant, your executive team was changed up as well. So I would love to have you walk us through how you navigated this merger after everything else that you had been through.
So, in just reflecting on the experience, I think what it boiled down to is I really just brought one simple point of view to the table every day, which was that nothing good comes from not bringing your best self every day. So, put another way, the energy you put out is often what comes back to you.
Say that one again. Nothing good comes.
Nothing good can come from not bringing your best self every day.
Mm-hmm.
And like, put another way, the energy you put out there is often what comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to bring that into every situation. So whether it was navigating 2 different CEOs in under 6 months, I worked with 3 different CEOs in my time there, or a brand new executive team, or new systems and processes that in many instances were counter to what we had established. That's all pretty significant, right? And I think it's pretty easy to potentially get defensive about what you've built before and be sort of focused on that. But that wasn't the tack I chose to take. Like I said, it can be easy to defend past decisions, but when the reality is it's a new day with a new structure and new ideas. So going against that grain, I just find to be a massive drain of energy. I really think about how to keep your energy up, and to your point earlier, stay positive. So I focused in that way, building relationships, educating the new team, also seeking to understand myself, and then also really thinking about the people and trying to be a rock for the folks underneath us across the organization. It's quite a bit of change. And then I was ultimately asked to stay on and help the new leadership navigate the transition, develop a new org structure, pressure test how to merge the best from both companies. And in doing so, I also got to really help a bunch of employees have closure. Work is often an emotional experience after all. So I think getting to see that process through with many of the teams that I built and coached, it honestly really meant a lot for me personally too.
Yeah, we have spoke with another C-suite executive at Amtrak about the importance of succession planning, and she said a lot of the similar things that you have about following through and making sure that your employees and your direct reports have that kind of closure and know that when this certain C-suite executive leaves, that they're in a really good position to carry the company onward. So I'm wondering for you, as you had, the new leadership and the new CEOs, what does that transition look like? How are you helping them integrate into the new company? The merger comes with a whole new set of things and systems and processes that you have to integrate. How do you go about, having the patience to teach them what life is like at FTD while also being open to their ideas and to whatever kind of systems they had in place prior to the merger.
Well, I think it kind of just goes back to those two things we talked about, which was, what's going to give you energy
Mm.
and what in the long run brings out positive, impact or effects or opportunities for yourself. So if you're bringing sort of a tired, negative, defensive mentality, that's not going to attract anything good for you in just the simple, logical way. That was kind of the way I looked at it. So I really just tried to kind of put that hat on every day, like we said. And then otherwise, I thought it was important when you're bringing together such different cultures and ways of operating to really try to highlight a couple of key things to your point about like succession planning and integrations. One is where knowing as a leader where your single points of failure are. As much as we try not to have them, there always kind of are throughout the systems and teams you build. And I think just merger or not, thinking through what those are and having sort of mental backup plans for yourself, even if you're not able to in that moment build out bigger teams or systems around it. I think too, just highlighting and sort of underscoring the difference in operating principles between the two companies. So I think of that as sort of mentalities or just really methodologies, points of view that we had about the way to build the business. Everything was structured around that and fell from that. So if you don't understand those, a lot of things can seem confusing. So I think it's important when you have a merger and a new sets of people coming together that you kind of start with, here are the core operating principles around the way we ran the business. Here are the core points of view we had about the market, and that all the decisions fell from that. And then I think thirdly, it's like the soft stuff, like the thing you can't find on a piece of paper anywhere, which is how the culture operates.
Right.
And again, I think for the incoming team, without having sort of some folks help shepherd that process, it can be clunky. It can feel uncomfortable for the incumbent employees. And at the end of the day, the idea for bringing companies together is always to be a more powerful and stronger force, right? And certainly there's that opportunity for From Flowers and FTD. So I think I tried to focus on how to bring those couple of things to light and just be a good partner.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't have a strong and powerful company if you don't understand how the company culture is.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I love what you were saying earlier about knowing as a leader where your points of failure are. I mean, going back to what you were saying about being transparent and being held accountable, we talk a lot on this podcast about celebrating failures. And when you have a leader who is failing publicly and is saying, look, it's okay to fail as long as, there's something coming out of that failure.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really resonated with me.
I always tried to own that, to your point, publicly. This happened. It didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. Here's why. Here's what we learned. And here's where we're going next. I think people can relate to that and can follow that. It's when you kind of can't unpack the picture for folks that it gets difficult to have confidence in leadership and to keep going, because you're inevitably going to hit rough patches, right? It doesn't all go smoothly.
Right. And when you see a leader who is, actively saying that, it encourages you to feel like you can fail and it's going to be okay. You're not going to get reprimanded or lose your job. So
exactly. And actually that's really the most excellent point about that approach. And I noticed that it also encouraged better conversation with me. I would find that employees would come to me and say, I'm working on this thing, but I cannot figure out how to solve it. Or, we just walked through that, but to be honest, I really didn't follow point 4 of the strategy. Can we do that again, just me and you? And I would observe that from teams that didn't even report to me. And that in turn helped me create better connections across all the divisions. So even though it's uncomfortable and seems kind of counterintuitive to like sort of publicly declare where you failed, I actually found it quite galvanizing, and as a leader, you're not sitting there feeling like, this is this thing I'm kind of harboring. You're kind of all in it together every day.
Right. I mean, it shows that you're human, right? And so often, when we have someone in the C-suite that's like this untouchable, their door is closed, they're so disjointed from their direct reports. But when you have someone who's vulnerable enough to say, I failed, and I don't have all the answers, and I'm struggling with figuring out the solution to this, then it makes them more human, and it makes the direct reports see, okay, well, if Christina is doing that, then it's okay for me to do that and be vulnerable as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about, how you got here, how you had a career in merchandising. I know that retail wasn't always in your career path. You were in marketing and advertising. So walk us through, your humble beginnings all the way until now.
Sure. I definitely have an atypical career path for landing in the role that I, was just in. I started in fashion at a luxury house. And I ultimately came up through Marcom at creative agencies and tech companies. And then I pivoted my career to be more general manager, track, and P&L responsibility, because I really wanted to gain that experience of sort of personally being responsible for building the business. And in the process, I was always choosing the company that was about to reinvent the space. For me, that was the common thread. I just loved that. It gave me a lot of energy. And in the process, I had built things from scratch to hundreds of millions of dollars in run rate and profitable businesses. And I think that really positioned me well for FTD, because the role at the time required an entrepreneurial lens. Mm-hmm. I think in a traditional approach to merchandising at that time, given what that team was and that company was going through, would have likely met a lot of frustration in the experience. And like I said, so much needed to be, I think, sort of retooled, and also required that really stronger bonds were formed across divisions, like we talked about, and much better communication. And that's a bit of my calling card. So, much of the connective tissue between the major divisions was something that I really focused on, and felt like a lot of what I had done in my prior roles kind of set me up well for that.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because at first, I think of FTD as a retailer, but it's really a tech company at its core. I think, you've talked about that. Your CEOs have talked about that. How do you apply that kind of thinking to your role in merchandising? Like, was it the tech that appealed to you as well, or was it kind of the more merchandising aspect?
Such a good question. So I like to come at things from the angle of, what is the consumer looking for? What's our competitive advantage? And then really lean into that overlap. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I get excited in the sort of that intellectual question. And then executing that is obviously, right, it's all in the execution of it. But I did pretty extensive research in my time at FTD, and consumers told us more and more that they wanted to send gifts same day or next day, that for them, speed was everything. Mm-hmm. And where they were spending money was increasingly outside of florals or in floral pairings, which I found really interesting. And they wanted something unique, the ability to put together an offering that was special. So we started to see the floral network as actually a powerful same-day delivery system for gifting that our tech powered. We were the point of sale in many of the 9,000 plus strong floral network that we have. And on the product development side, I really leaned into that. How could I create something really special that our floral network could deliver same day or next day that you couldn't get anywhere else? Mm-hmm. That's what kind of got me very excited. So we actually launched a number of collaborations. We paired Christina Tozzi's Milk Bar, Cakes and Cookies.
I saw that one. I was very excited about that one.
Yeah, with our best-selling flowers. That one, super fun. We did a Baked by Melissa collaboration. We launched our own candle. We made that available with flowers that same day and next day. And all these categories were where consumers were actually spending more money on gifting, and where they said they actually really wanted to pair those with florals. And we just saw that it had such a fun and excellent result. It activated our email file. It drove really strong return purchase into our flagship offering in the end. So, when people would come back, they would buy into the offering that we've had for quite a long time. And in the end, it really helped us dust off a brand that, can you believe it, has been around for over 100 years.
Right. And that's the innovation that I think appeals to a lot of leaders. And, like you said, choosing companies that are about to reinvent the space. I mean, you were really in that and really saw the transformation through to the other end. So kudos for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some personal things. And I know that you took a pause from work to have a baby in 2020. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And the only reason that I know that is because I saw that you put it on your LinkedIn profile. I think you wrote, full-time mom or maternity leave or something like that. And I hesitate to ask this question because I know that we never would have asked this question as a man, but as a women's organization, and we have a lot of moms, in our membership, a lot of moms listening who might be in a similar position. What advice do you have for kind of re-entering the workforce following this life change? And even, what made you decide to take that break and to kind of put it out there as like, look, this is a real thing. Being a full-time mom is a full-time job. And I'm going to put that on my resume, put that on my LinkedIn, and treat it as any other job.
So first of all, thank you so much for asking this question. I'm excited that you did. And I think, I intentionally put it on my resume, and I'm thankful that actually during that time, LinkedIn gave us a way to represent the choices we make in our career better in a more well-rounded way. That was a new function that didn't exist before. And, career is often not a straight line, as many people make it out to be. So I made that decision actually because, I had my son really 2 minutes before lockdown in COVID. So it became quite challenging with no childcare, a 3-month-old, sleep deprivation, 2 parents working from home, passing an infant back and forth between meetings, to show up the way I wanted to show up in all the ways, right? As a partner, as a mother, as a COO at the time. And so for me, I felt that I just wanted to take a step back and see what came to the surface for me. And initially, I wasn't sure how long I wanted that to be. And then the more and more I gave myself some space to kind of see how I felt about it, the more I felt sure that I wanted to be with my son till he was at least 1 year old. So I stayed with him for his first year. And I loved that. Such a really a gift. So the advice I kind of have to other parents who are in the process of that, of making that decision or have made that decision to step out of the workforce for a period of time, is really just to own it as big as you can. I have actually found no recruiter or CEO to look poorly on that decision when I tell my story. And I often get into much more detail in those conversations. And in fact, I found that it helped lay the groundwork for setting an equitable environment for parents once I stepped into a leadership role at FTD. And that, so for me, that's kind of point one. And then the next is, for new parents, I would say, is how you think about restructuring your time now that you're bringing family and work together. Going back into the workforce, thinking you're going to put it all together exactly as you did before, is just setting yourself up for failure. And every parent will tell you there's no 2 days that are the same. Small humans throw all the biggest challenges your way. So I would say, looking for an environment that allows you the flexibility to be successful in the way that works for you, not a stringent set of codes. That's going to give you the best opportunity or the best chance to really, again, show up the way you want to show up, be happy, be the parent and partner you want to be. And I think developing a set of questions going into that interview process that's going to let you unearth that is, and asking that same question to everyone you talk to is really helpful. And then, if you have a life partner, just so important that you have lots of conversation about how you're going to support one another in what you both need to succeed and what that's going to look like. And that is also not a thing, you have to work on that every day. It's if both parents are working. And then just be gentle on yourself, expect it to all look different, because it's definitely going to.
Yeah. And I think the more parents who go into any sort of job interview or networking opportunity with the goal of asking those questions, the more companies will be aware of the need for that flexibility and that parental leave and everything that we just talked about. So, and I know, we have our peer groups with women in retail, and so many of our members are moms, and they all laugh when we talk about work-life balance, because any parent will tell you that there is no such thing as a work-life balance. And moms especially, carry that guilt, right? We call it mom guilt of, if I'm focusing on my kids, then I'm, not focusing 100% on my job, and vice versa. And like you said, it's that balance of having a great partner who's in line with your priorities and your values, having a company who's in line with your values and your priorities, and then, restructuring your day in a way that really works for you.
And not expecting it to all look the same every day.
Right.
I think pre-kids, you can have a pretty repeatable schedule. But with small humans, you just can't. There's fevers, there's school closures, there's all kinds of stuff. So I like to think about it more like the week versus the day. Like, what do I need to accomplish this week? And what's happening today or tomorrow, and sort of where are the pockets of time that allow me to get to the core goals from this week, versus expecting every day to have the energy level be exactly the same with the exact same amount of hours and it all been put together identical. Back to what I was saying, you just set yourself up for failure that way. And I think you want to look for environments that believe in your ability to succeed, and just care about your hitting the goal and not the way you hit the goal.
Right. And it goes back to, in the workplace, if you have a leader who you're seeing have that flexibility in their own personal life, they're going to be more likely to embrace that as well when they see a leader who's like, I don't care when you pick up your kids, when you have time to do this, as long as it's done, like you said, hitting the goal, it doesn't really matter which way you take to get to that goal.
And just dispelling the notion that this equals less hours put into the job or less effective. It doesn't. And I think that's often the fear of the employer, right? Oftentimes I find parents to be the most efficient because they know they have guardrails at the top and the bottom of their day, right?
Right.
They have to relieve childcare. They have to do drop off. So you're a bit of like an excellent executing machine the hours in between. And then you find pockets of energy at odd times, after your kid goes to bed, because you want to do dinner every night with your family, if that's a choice you make, et cetera. So I think just dispelling that notion for people is also really important.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so I want to kind of close with asking you what's next? What are you looking forward to, both, professionally and personally, as we I can't believe I'm saying this, get towards 2024?
I know. Well, certainly this is a super interesting moment for me. I'm really excited about my next chapter. I feel in many ways I'm finally the leader I always wanted to be. Certainly we all have room to keep growing, but I feel like I've really come into my own a lot in the past 3 years. I'm looking to being with the next great team and business that I'm passionate about. I had some really amazing colleagues in this last role, and I think that always is what makes or breaks the experience. And then above all, just really putting first and foremost, showing up as a great partner to my husband and son in this next year. So that's what I've got top of mind, and looking forward to how it unfolds.
Awesome. Well, the final question I want to ask you, I mean, you've already given us so much advice throughout this conversation, but if I could just pick your brain one last time and ask you, what's one tip or one piece of advice that you have for the next generation of female retail leaders who, should be focused on advancing their careers?
Thanks for that. It's a good one. I think besides, navigating the ongoing trends in tech, certainly the conversation around AI is endless. The next gen conversations around measurement, omni-channel retail, et cetera. I would say, really just looking for opportunities to take the business to the next level, stepping out of your myopia to solve problems. Be the one to challenge the way it's always been done, or just start by asking questions. I find that it's always those people who are naturally elevated. And I think if you come at it from that perspective, there's going to be this nice synergy of where your strengths lie and what the business needs, that helps get you ahead in the way that is the best for you.
Awesome. Well, I mean, there's so much great advice in here, and I cannot wait to see what is next for you. Hopefully we can have you back on in the future when we see you in your next role. So I really enjoyed this conversation. Christina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please go to womeninretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Women in Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review our show. Lastly, if you're a female retail leader interested in joining our community at Women in Retail Leadership Circle, visit womeninretail.com/apply. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.